Because I was really angry at that point.
And you've been angry for a long time, hadn't you?
Yeah, she was getting me angrier, and angrier every day.
On the afternoon of the 18th of September 1989, workers at the Port Authority bus terminal in New York City were carrying out their usual tasks. They were cleaning spillages, sorting unclaimed luggage and ensuring the smooth operation of one of the busiest transit hubs in the country. The parcel check area, which is a place where travellers stored their belongings before continuing their journeys, was particularly active. It cost just $2 for 12 hours of safekeeping, and the area was filled with an assortment of suitcases, duffel bags and the occasional forgotten package. Amidst the usual clutter, there was a green army duffel bag that had a lock securing it. At first it blended in, just another item among the sea of belongings waiting to be claimed. That afternoon, however, a man arrived at the parcel check-in counter, flanked by police officers. He was rugged, dishevelled, a presence that immediately drew attention. Without hesitation, he handed over his claim ticket. The clerk retrieved the bag and set it down in front of him. Then, in a voice disturbingly casual, he turned to the officers and said, "If you open the bag, you'll find bones inside." The officers exchanged glances. This was no ordinary luggage retrieval. With growing unease, they unfastened the lock and pulled open the bag. Inside was a plastic bucket, white, heavy, and giving off a strange, acrid smell. The kind that clings to the air, thick and unmistakable. Cautiously, they pried it open. And what they found inside was the stuff of nightmares. A human skull stripped clean. Several bones, some wrapped in plastic. A 15-inch carving knife, its blade still sharp. And cat litter, piled at the bottom, as though in some desperate attempt to mask the decay. The detectives didn't have to wonder whose remains they had just uncovered. They already knew, because the man standing in front of them, the man who had led them there, was the killer himself. It was the summer of 1989, and New York City was suffocating under the unforgiving heatwave. The kind that turned the streets into shimmering asphalt rivers, where the stench of sweat, garbage, and cheap beer clung in the air. But in the East Village, another kind of pressure was building, one that had been festering for years in the heart of Tompkins Square Park. This park was its own world, a battleground of desperation and defiance, a haven for the outcast, the addicted, and the disillusioned. The city had tried to take it back through police raids, through aggressive gentrification, but the people who lived there, the ones who had nowhere else to go, weren't so easily pushed out. They pitched their tents beneath the skeletal branches of dying elms, staking their claim on patches of dirt and crumbling pavement. During the day, the park was a chaotic symphony of voices. Addicts thumped against graffitied walls. Activists handed out leaflets condemning police brutality, and musicians strummed battered guitars, their music lost in the hum of shouting and sirens. It was a place of survival, where the forgotten and the forsaken clung to the only thing they had left, each other. And then there was him. He wasn't like the others. Tall, wiry, with unkempt blonde hair and a beard that tangled like roots in the dirt, he walked the park with the posture of a prophet. He called himself the founder of a new faith, a man with a vision, a man with a cause. On his shoulder always was a rooster. His name was Daniel Rakowitz. And if the people of Tompkins Square Park knew what they would soon come to learn, they would have run. Daniel Rakowitz was, to the casual observer, just another eccentric in a city full of them. He spoke in riddles, shifting between wide-eyed preacher and drug-addled lunatic with unsettling ease. He called himself the leader of the Church of 966, a doctrine of his own creation that seemed to shift depending on his mood and his audience. But Rakowitz's vision was clear. He believed that he was destined to take over the state of Texas, that his followers, whoever they might be, would rise up under his command. He idolized Charles Manson, seeing him not as a murderer, but as a misunderstood prophet. In Rakowitz's mind, he was the next in line. He wasn't just talk. He sold marijuana in the park, handing out leaflets that read, "Boycott the white powder, bring back the herb, make pot cheaper than crack." And soon people started calling him what he wanted to be known as, the marijuana guru. Others knew him as the Chicken Man, as he sometimes carried a dead chicken around his neck. With his earnings from selling marijuana, Rakowitz sometimes brought live chickens and slaughtered them in the park to feed the homeless. But unlike many of the drifters who made their home in Tompkins Square Park, Rakowitz wasn't actually homeless. He had a place, an apartment on East 9th Street. A cockroach-infested hole in the wall where the walls whispered decay and the air hung heavy with the scent of something rotten. Rakowitz had taken over the lease on the 3rd of August 1989, moving in with 2 cats, his pet rooster, and 2 roommates who came and went. On his door he had scrawled in black marker, "Is it soup yet?" And beneath that, another phrase, "Welcome to Charlie Gein's Spawn Ranch East." It was a reference to Ed Gein and the infamous Death Valley compound, where Charles Manson had once held court with his followers. Laurie Arnold, one of Rakowitz's neighbours, later described him with a mixture of disgust and unease, as she said, "He's a weird, sick dude. He thought he was the Antichrist." Before he became the so-called marijuana guru, Daniel Rakowitz was just a boy. He was born on Christmas Eve in 1960 in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, a military town where discipline ruled and expectations were clear. His father, Tony Rakowitz, was a homicide detective in the US Army. A straight-laced, no-nonsense man who believed in order, rules and obedience. But Daniel? Sheriff Rob Hughes would later say, his father was a straight-laced fellow, a real disciplinarian. But the boy, he was a mental basket case, I guess you'd have to say. Daniel Rakowitz was only 2 years old when his mother died of a heart attack, and he was alone with her when it happened. A toddler left in a hotel room with his mother's lifeless body for hours before anybody found them. Tony remarried, but not just anybody, his late wife's sister. It was supposed to restore some stability, a sense of normalcy, but it didn't last. The family moved constantly, dragged from place to place by the shifting demands of Tony's career. Eventually, in the late 1970s, they settled in Rockport, Texas, where Daniel finally graduated from high school. By then, however, the cracks were already showing. His Aunt Patricia later admitted, "Some kids grow out of it and some don't." He never grew up. Drugs had become an escape. Marijuana, psychedelics, whatever he could get his hands on. His father, who was desperate to set him straight, pushed him towards the military, and for a moment it seemed like it might work. In June 1980, Daniel Rakowitz enlisted in the US Army. He trained as a sharpshooter, and he excelled in rifle marksmanship. He spent 14 weeks at Army Law Enforcement School, but beneath the surface something was wrong. In February of 1982, he was discharged under honourable conditions. But a single notation on his permanent record hinted at something more. Misconduct, fraudulent entry. There was no explanation, no further details, just a vague mark against his name, an implication that something had gone wrong. Rakowitz returned home, but the rift between him and his father had grown far too wide to fix. His temper flared, his behaviour became more erratic. He was arrested for marijuana possession. He ripped up his father's trailer in fits of rage. Tony eventually had enough and he threw his son out. And so in 1985, Daniel Rakowitz packed his bags and drifted north, leaving behind Texas for the chaos of New York City. At Tompkins Square Park, he found what he'd been looking for all his life. A place where the rules didn't matter, where outsiders thrived. Here, he wasn't just another lost soul. He belonged. Rakowitz reinvented himself as a prophet of sorts, a leader of the rejected, the unwanted. He declared himself the Antichrist and warned of apocalyptic times ahead. If somebody ever doubted him, he had his own proof. His birth date, December 24th, 1960, Christmas Eve. And using a cryptic numerical code, he claimed the letters of his name added up to 666. To him, that wasn't coincidence, it was fate. He'd recently taken part in an altercation with the police in the park. During the riot, he screamed, "Kill the pigs and feed them to the hogs." He believed that cocaine and heroin dealers should be killed and the government should be overthrown. But Rakowitz's ambition stretched beyond prophecies and paranoia. He had plans, big ones. He wanted to renovate the rundown building next to his cockroach-infested apartment and transform it into headquarters for his marijuana empire. That was just the start. He wanted to move back to Texas, buy an island in the Gulf and use it as a hub for drug smuggling, watching his shipments come and go as he supplied marijuana to what he called the free world. At least, that's what he told people. But in reality, Daniel Rakowitz wasn't building an empire. He was unraveling. And soon, the streets of New York City would learn just how far his delusions would take him. When Daniel Rakowitz moved into the cockroach-infested apartment on East 9th Street, he hadn't moved in alone. By his side was 26-year-old Monika Beerle. Monika was a woman of grace and discipline, a dancer whose life had been dedicated to movement, to the fluid expression of the body. She had come from St. Gallen, a picturesque Swiss town known for its textiles and ski resorts. It was a far cry from the grid of East Village, but for Monika, the contrast was intoxicating. She had trained at the prestigious Sigurd Leader School, earning a certificate in teaching and choreography. She toured her own work across Europe before settling her sights on the epicenter of modern dance, New York City. In 1985, Monika arrived in Manhattan to study at the Martha Graham School of Contemporary Dance. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. She took 2 or 3 classes a day, pouring herself into the art. Alison Sherman, a spokesman for the school, would later recall. She danced in student performances at her school and was diligent in taking classes. She was deeply talented. But Monika's path wasn't easy. After 16 months, she returned to Switzerland to care for her sick mother. When she came back to New York, the city wasn't as welcoming as it had been before. She struggled. She confided in friends that she had been raped. She had no steady income. But still, Monika stayed. My favourite city, she called it. And she wasn't going to leave. Monika met Daniel Rakowitz the way so many connections were made in the East Village, on a bench in Tompkins Square Park, sharing a joint. By then, Rakowitz had built a reputation in the park. He was hard to miss, tall, wiry, with wild hair and a rooster as his ever-present companion. He recently said to a freelance writer, "I say that I'm the new lord, and I'll take leadership of the satanic cultists to make sure they do everything that has to be done to destroy all those people who disagree with my church." He ranted about Charles Manson, marijuana, and his so-called church of 966. But Monika didn't seem to mind. According to her friend, she was indiscriminate in her love life. One friend later remarked, "Monika was the nicest person you'd ever meet, but she was so naive in her love life. I thought she was a sexaholic, like looking for Mr. Goodbar, but she said no. We discussed AIDS, but she thought I was paranoid." Maybe Monika was looking for somebody to take care of her. Maybe she saw something in Rakowitz that others didn't. Or maybe she just needed a place to stay. She'd been living alone on Orchard Street, but it was small, cramped, and expensive. She wanted something bigger. Rakowitz offered her a place in his apartment. It wasn't much, just a 2-bedroom unit with roommates who drifted in and out, but it was something. Within a week, Monika paid the back rent on the $650 a month apartment. She even put her name on the lease. But almost immediately, things took a dark turn. Rakowitz had told her she'd be safe there. He promised. But soon, Monika would realise that she had moved in with a man who was unravelling. And before long, she would pay the ultimate price. In the 2 weeks leading up to the grim discovery at the Port Authority bus terminal, Daniel Rakowitz had been talking. And what he was saying was nothing short of terrifying. It started with complaints about Monika. He told people at Tompkins Square Park that she was his girlfriend, but she was pissing him off. "Charlie Manson has nothing on me," he bragged to one of them. Monika too had been voicing her own concerns. She confided in friends that something was wrong. One friend later recalled, "She told me she was in trouble. She said her boyfriend owed money." The relationship had gone south, and it had gone south fast. After Monika put her name on the lease, she started making changes. She told Rakowitz he needed to get rid of his beloved rooster. And then she and the other roommates made a decision. Rakowitz had to go. He was erratic, unpredictable, dangerous. They didn't feel safe with him living there. Laurie Arnold, who lived across the hall, later recalled, "She told me he was a pig and he was insane, but he said he wouldn't leave." Then, one day, Monika was gone. She had vanished and Rakowitz seemed angry about it. Laurie remembered an encounter with him in the hallway. He told me that she got up and split on him, that he hated her. He was filled with rage, she said. But while Monika was nowhere to be seen, Rakowitz was still there. Still walking the streets, still holding court in the park. And then he started to talk. Rakowitz told his followers that Monika was dead. And not just that, he had killed her. At first it sounded like the ramblings of a madman, but then the details came spilling out. According to Rakowitz, it happened on the 19th of August. He said that they had been arguing, and Monika told him he needed to leave. She said her sister was coming from Switzerland and needed the space. But Rakowitz wasn't buying it. That day he had been smoking marijuana and dropping acid. His mind was already unhinged, and in his drug-fueled rage, he said that he lashed out. He punched Monika in the throat. She dropped to the floor, gasping for air. But Rakowitz didn't stop. He hit her again and again and again. Then he dragged her limp body into the bathroom. He placed her in the bathtub and went to the kitchen, where he grabbed a 15-inch carving knife. Rakowitz claimed that he stabbed Monika more than 30 times. He let her blood run down the drain.
Mom went and bought me a plastic tarp, put it in the bathtub, then I carried her to the bathtub, put her in there, and then started chopping her up in the bathtub.
Rakowitz then dismembered her and cut off her head. But things got even worse. Rakowitz told people that he had cooked Monika's flesh and then ate some of it. That he had boiled her skin and flushed it down the toilet. That he had disposed of her organs the same way. It seemed too insane to be true. Too grotesque even for somebody like him. But for weeks Rakowitz wouldn't shut up about it. He wanted people to know. And eventually the stories reached the apartment building where Monika had lived. They reached the superintendent, Dave DePaulo. He had seen Rakowitz dragging out Monika's belongings over the past couple of weeks. He decided to confront Rakowitz about the rumours he had heard. He later recalled, "He told me that bitch attacked me, she scratched me, then I hit her and killed her. I didn't mean to, but I killed her, dude. It got out of hand. I cut her, and I boiled her head. I made soup out of her brains and it tasted pretty good." And then finally, the rumours reached police. But was there any truth to the horrific rumours? Or was this just another one of Daniel Rakowitz's sick fantasies? After hearing the disturbing rumours, detectives knew they had to find Monika. The first place they checked was her apartment on East 9th Street. They knocked on the front door and Daniel Rakowitz answered. He seemed surprised, bemused even. He told detectives that Monika had split one day, just up and left, that he had no idea where she had gone. When they asked to look around, he let them in. Inside the apartment there was nothing. No body, no blood, no crime scene, just a run-down, cluttered apartment crawling with cockroaches. A place where someone could have been killed, But if they had, there was no evidence left behind. Then detectives received a phone call. It was Monika's family. They hadn't heard from her. She hadn't shown up to her dance classes. She had simply just vanished. Suddenly, the rumours seemed harder to ignore. Detectives searched the apartment again. They checked the pipes, the stairwells, every possible hiding place. But there was nothing. Detectives filed a missing person report, but Rakowitz stuck to his same story. Monika had just left. They weren't convinced. They wanted to talk to the other roommates. It took a few days to track them down, and when they did, what they heard would blow the case wide open. One of the roommates told them the truth. Monika was dead. He'd seen it with his own eyes. He had seen her head boiling in a pot on the stove, and he'd been too afraid to tell anybody. With this new information, detectives moved quickly. On the 18th of September, they tracked Daniel Rakowitz down. He'd picked up a job at a Brooklyn restaurant. They found him there and arrested him. He didn't resist. He didn't even seem surprised. He knew why they were there. And then, Rakowitz led them to the bus station, to the baggage storage room in the Port Authority terminal. There, sitting in a duffel bag from the army, was a bucket. Inside that bucket, Monika's bleached bones and her skull. The rumours weren't rumours anymore. They were the horrific truth. Following his arrest, Daniel Rakowitz didn't hesitate.
I went ahead and just punched her.
Where'd you punch her?
Right in the throat.
You punch her hard?
Yeah.
As hard as you've ever punched anybody before?
Yeah, well, one time I had a fight with like 19 guys, and then I was punching pretty well too.
He confessed to every gruesome, horrifying detail.
Well, the first thing I did, I let out the blood from the neck. I lifted her legs up above the bathtub so that all the blood would drain down, and so that it would flow downward, so I could get all the blood out of her body, which did work.
How long did that take?
That took maybe about an hour or so. Just because the blood was like, it didn't squirt out whenever I cut it. It didn't even come out right then.
Where did you cut her in order to drain the blood out?
Right here.
On the left side of her neck?
Yeah.
How did you know to do that?
I don't know. I just thought that was the thing to do.
He told detectives it had taken him 10 days to dismember Monika's body. 10 days spent boiling her flesh. He admitted to playing with her bones, to sitting in that apartment surrounded by the remnants of what he had done.
The horribleness in what I did to her. I dissected her body totally.
Why don't you tell me how you did that?
I just started chopping her up, cooking her meat.
How did you chop her up?
With a butcher knife and the aid of a saw.
What kind of saw did you use?
Just a wood saw.
Where did you get the saw?
From a hardware store.
So you went out and bought a saw?
That day, I went out and bought a saw.
Now what time are we talking about now?
This is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
That you went out to buy the saw?
Yeah, because I realized, wow, I'm going to be going to prison now for murder, you know?
He described the moment Monika fell to the floor, how she gasped for air, choking, how he had checked her pulse, felt her heart still beating. And then he waited. He left, came back, and checked again. And when her heart had stopped, he did nothing. Because he hadn't wanted to save her. When asked why, his answer was simple. She wanted to throw me out of the apartment.
Because I was really angry at that point.
And you've been angry for a long time, hadn't you?
Yeah, she was getting me angrier, and angrier every day.
His anger had built up over time. He let it fester. I had so much hate in my body against her, he said. I was angrier and angrier. Until one day he snapped. If you mess with me, I'm going to mess with you, he warned her. And he did.
But I didn't realize that if you hit a person in the throat, that would do anything, really.
You didn't realize it might cut off their air supply?
No, I just figured by hitting her in the throat that She just like would not leave. She'd leave me alone.
How long was she lying there with her, heart beating?
Oh man, for like 45 minutes.
And what did you do? Did you smoke another joint?
I did smoke another joint. I actually thought that she was faking it all this time. That there was nothing wrong with her. Because her heart was beating. You know? She was still must have been getting air for her heart to be beating, right?
Have you ever had any fights with her before?
No, it's not where I, hit her or nothing. She had scratched me the night before, in which I threw her on her butt, and she fell backward and all this. And then she was like coming at me again. I slammed the door in her face. And then like she went through my door later. And then I said, hey, if you come in here, I'm going to hit the hell out of you.
You said that to her Friday night?
Yeah, Friday night. And she says, well, I'll get you tomorrow then. And she was telling me how earlier Friday she was going to bring in the guy with the pit bull. And so I was like, well, said, bring him in, I'll kill this dog. That's what I said.
So for all those 45 minutes you were sitting there watching her while she was on the floor?
I was watching cartoons and smoking a joint and just thinking that, wow, she's faking this because she's still breathing. I mean, I'm still breathing.
What happened after
I figured she was faking the breathing. After 45 minutes, then wow. See, I actually even left out. I went to make a pot delivery of all things at Tompkins Square Park. And I came back about 2 hours later, and she was still lying there.
She was still breathing?
No, then I touched her and she was cold.
That's when you realized she was dead?
That's when I realized she was dead.
What did you do then?
Then I was very fearful. And then I went ahead and did what I did.
The detectives who interviewed him were shaken. One described Rakowitz as a classic psychopath with zero remorse. However, they did believe that he had exaggerated some of his claims. He had told some people that he turned Monika's brain to soup. But when they recovered her remains, her brain was very much intact. Manhattan Chief of Police Ronald Fenrich didn't mince his words when he said, "He's got no conscience. He's not embarrassed by what he did. He'll tell you all about it." And Rakowitz certainly did. He was charged with second-degree murder and one count of tampering with physical evidence. He was sent for a psychiatric evaluation at Bellevue Hospital. A month later, his defense lawyer, Philip Edelbaum, announced the results. The court-appointed psychiatrist had ruled Rakowitz mentally fit to stand trial. But Edelbaum wasn't convinced. He wanted a second opinion from a defense psychiatrist, because Daniel Rakowitz wasn't just pleading not guilty, he was considering pleading insanity. At first, Daniel Rakowitz was deemed sane at the time of Monika's murder. But that would change. A year later in August, a courtroom psychiatrist took to the stand and shattered that diagnosis. Dr. Howard Owens, a court-appointed psychiatrist, believed that Rakowitz was indeed insane. He diagnosed him with paranoid delusions. According to Owens, Rakowitz was unable to fully comprehend how a murder trial even worked. Owens told the courtroom, "He believes he's the Lord. He believes spirits have appeared to him in the past. He believes he is being framed because he's a revolutionary, an activist." And strangely, despite confessing to Monika's murder, Rakowitz now claimed that a person named People had actually killed her. Who was People? Nobody knew because People wasn't real. But then something else emerged. Rakowitz had spent time in 4 different psychiatric hospitals before he killed Monika. Owens said that his delusions weren't something new. He was a man who saw prophetic visions in everyday objects, who believed a simple piece of paper angled in a certain way could reveal hidden messages. And in one of his stranger beliefs, Rakowitz dreamed of winning public office in Texas. Not as a senator, not as a governor, but as a sheriff who had established a safe haven for persecuted people, where marijuana could be smoked freely. Then came a bizarre twist. Against his lawyer's direct advice, Rakowitz took to the stand. He wanted to convince the judge that he was sane, because in his mind he wasn't guilty. He believed that he had been framed. In a calm, almost casual voice, he told the court, "I'm just a guy who would rather live a life of peace, love and happiness." He claimed that he spent his days watching nature programs and smoking weed. He even said he wanted a jury made up of marijuana smokers. Despite his testimony, the court ruled him competent to stand trial. Afterwards, his lawyer, Philip Edelbaum, immediately withdrew from the case. He said he wanted to pursue an insanity defence, but Rakowitz refused, and the two were at an impasse. A new lawyer was assigned, Franklin Gould, a man known for defending Robert Wallace, the so-called karate kick killer. By January of 1991, jury selection began. Judge Robert Half had issued a warning. This trial will be grisly, vivid. It will not be a pretty picture. He gave jurors an option. If they had a weak stomach, they could walk away now. By January 10th, the jury was set. 7 women, 5 men. The stage was ready, and all the gruesome details were about to unfold. During opening statements, prosecutor Maurice Mathis said he told police he'd had a fight with her and she'd walked out and he'd never saw her again. He said that eventually, however, Rakowitz admitted to the murder, telling detectives he had punched, choked and stabbed her. He said to the jury, although he knew CPR, he did nothing. He did worse than nothing. He watched television. He got high. He went about his business. He left Monika Beerle to die.
The defendant went to extraordinary lengths to avoid being caught here, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, one might suppose that he had committed a virtually perfect crime.
After the prosecution's opening statements, the defence were poised to begin theirs. However, the judge announced that he was delaying the trial so that lawyers could meet with psychiatrists to decide whether they could launch an insanity defence. Just the next day, the trial continued. During defence attorney Franklin Gould's opening statements, he referred to his client as mentally disturbed. However, he said that Rakowitz was innocent.
Please, everything you think about, put it in the context of that man's mental condition. Whether he did it, didn't do it, there's no evidence of it, there is evidence of it. Whatever it is, put it in his mental condition.
He portrayed him as an eccentric who admitted to the murder only because he would say anything to anyone. He stated, Daniel Rakowitz had a different kind of history. Of course he was mentally disturbed. He wanted to feed hungry people. He was a character. He suggested that the police work in the case had been so shoddy that the real murderers had escaped justice. He went on to spend most of his opening statement attacking the character of Monika. He referred to her as a striptease dancer and suggested she suffered from psychiatric problems. Testimony got underway with various people testifying about what Rakowitz had told them about the murder of Monika. But it wasn't long before trouble arose and a mistrial loomed. Rakowitz's defence attorneys threatened to withdraw from the case over an ethical issue. The prosecutor said he intended on calling a woman to the stand who the defence attorneys had represented in a drunk driving case several years earlier. The woman, Beth Nunez, was going to testify that Rakowitz had told her he had taken care of Monika. Defence attorney Norman Reamer said it would be a violation of legal ethics for him to cross-examine her. He stated, "It's unseemly for a lawyer to try to discredit someone who has placed their trust in you." However, Beth said she agreed to be cross-examined. The gruesome testimony then continued with Milton Irizarry. He said that Rakowitz had served soup containing a human finger to one of his friends. The court also heard testimony from Detective Thomas Ray, who testified about Rakowitz leading them to Monika's remains in the bus terminal. He said to the court, "I could see the top of a human skull and a knife handle." He further said that Rakowitz told him he had killed Monika during a fight when she came at him with a lead pipe. The jury were then shown the videotaped confession from Rakowitz. He had said he wanted to get rid of Monika's body as quickly as possible in case police didn't believe that she had just up and left. He stated, "I was totally repulsed by it. I couldn't believe what was happening." He said he was surprised that Monika hadn't quickly recovered after he punched her in the throat. He stated, "I was really tripped out. I was like, Monika, why are you faking this?" He recalled how Monika lay on the floor gurgling as he went into the living room to smoke some marijuana. He said he then left the apartment to purchase a hacksaw to chop up her body. He stated, "I cooked her up so that I could manage the meat better." Daniel Rakowitz testified on his own behalf at the trial and told the jury he had nothing to do with Monika's murder. He claimed that when he returned to the apartment on the 19th of August, he saw a torso and head of a dead body in the bathtub, but he wasn't sure who it was. He said that several days later he returned home to find pots, buckets and plates of bones, flesh and internal organs scattered about the apartment. He testified, "There was human-looking flesh over this red meat in my freezer. I assumed that must be the missing legs." He said that at one point he became obsessed with discarding of the bones because he feared he would be charged with the murder of whoever it was. He said he disinfected them after finding that they were crawling with maggots. He explained, "If I was dead, I would want someone to clean my bones that way. It's only right." But during another point in the testimony, he said he wanted to tell police and offered several friends money to go with him to the police. When Rakowitz was cross-examined, he lashed out at Prosecutor Mathis, telling him he'd like to spray him with stagnant urine from a machine gun water pistol if he were freed. He stated, "I would have liked to destroy your body. I know it sounds vile, but that's what I intend to do." Before his testimony, his defense attorney had asked the judge to declare Rakowitz unfit for trial. He'd called on psychiatrist Dr. Cheryl Paradis, who testified that Rakowitz was psychotic at the time of Monika's death. He also called on Dr. Daniel Schwartz, a psychiatrist, who testified that Rakowitz was a paranoid schizophrenic now and at the time of the murder. Rakowitz had told the psychiatrist that he once worked as a Ritz cracker arranger. He even carried a copy of Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf covered with cryptic markings. It appeared as though defense attorney Gould was putting on an insanity defense, although he hadn't indicated that during his opening statements. The prosecutor countered the psychiatrist's testimony with a rebuttal witness, Dr. Stuart Kirshner. He said he believed that Rakowitz knew what he was doing when he killed Monika and knew that it was wrong. While Rakowitz maintained his innocence, it soon became apparent that he hadn't only confessed to detectives and his followers at the park. According to Ronald Morales, while he was awaiting processing at Manhattan Central Booking, Rakowitz confessed to him as well. He said that Rakowitz told him he struck Monika in the throat, then chopped off her head, drained her body of blood, boiled the bones and body parts before disinfecting them and dumping them. After that, the trial drew to a close. During closing arguments, prosecutor Maurice Mathis told the jury that it was a simple case, that Daniel Rakowitz had killed Monika Beerle. He pointed to his videotaped confession and stated, "A person can be as crazy as a loon, as crazy as a bedbug, and still commit murder." Despite being warned by Judge Robert Half, Rakowitz mumbled throughout the prosecutor's closing arguments. Defense attorney Franklin Gould used his closing arguments to say that if Rakowitz had killed Monika, he was mentally ill in doing so and didn't know what he was doing. He stated, "We're talking about a sick man. It's funny, but it's terrible." He suggested for the first time that Monika was actually killed by a cult and that Rakowitz may have played a part. He then added, "What really happened, we'll never know." The jury were sent off to deliberate, and by the third day, they remained deadlocked. They requested definitions of legal terms and a rereading of testimony, yet a verdict still seemed out of reach. It took them 9 days before they finally returned with a decision. Daniel Rakowitz was found not guilty by reason of insanity. It wasn't the verdict the majority had wanted. A single holdout had refused to yield, forcing the rest of the jury to concede in order to break the deadlock. The jury forewoman, Lois Markle, later stated, "From day one, this particular person was determined that the jury was going to find Rakowitz not guilty by reason of mental disease. Upon hearing the verdict, Rakowitz turned to the jury and remarked, "I hope we can split a joint together someday." Under the ruling, Rakowitz could have been eligible for release in just 6 months. In May, he was ordered to be committed to a psychiatric hospital as a dangerously insane person for at least that duration. Then after 6 months, he was deemed to still pose a threat. In February of 1992, detectives announced they now believed that Monika Beerle had actually been killed by a cult and that Rakowitz had accomplices. They also suspected that her flesh had been cooked and fed to the homeless. Police arrested a second man, Randy Easterday, on charges of assisting Rakowitz in her murder. Detectives had been working with an informant who claimed to have witnessed Easterday stabbing an unconscious Monika repeatedly in the chest. A second informant alleged that Easterday had boasted about helping Rakowitz dismember her body. Detectives now believe that Monika had been murdered and mutilated in a satanic ritual ceremony. From his cell at the Kirby Forensic Psychiatrist Center, Rakowitz spoke with a reporter from the Los Angeles Times. Regarding Easterday, he stated, "I heard Randy talk about eating dead babies, but I never believed it. So I tell him about killing animals and killing people, just to see who could shock the other guy worst." Rakowitz claimed that it was Easterday and 3 others who had killed Monika, not him. He alleged that upon returning to the apartment, he found her already dead, dismembered and decapitated, with satanic symbols surrounding the remains. In April, however, all charges against Randy Easterday were dropped after an assistant district attorney determined there was insufficient evidence to secure a conviction. Then in 1995, Daniel Rakowitz argued that he was a changed man, ready to be released back into society. However, during the court hearing to determine his sanity, disturbing details of his past continued to emerge. Before the murder of Monika Beerle, he had married a 14-year-old girl, handcuffed her to a refrigerator, and subjected her to relentless abuse. He beat her frequently, and on one occasion even shoved her out of a moving car. When questioned about his violent tendencies, Rakowitz blamed his actions on smoking too much weed. It was also revealed that he had once attempted to kill his father, and would have succeeded if the gun hadn't jammed. Despite these revelations, his defense attorney insisted that he had changed, stating, "He's been relatively well behaved, except that he makes racist remarks." The judge was unconvinced. He believed that if Rakowitz were released, he would almost certainly return to drugs, relapse and become a threat to women. He was ordered to remain confined. In 2004, Rakowitz made yet another attempt at freedom. This time it was up to a jury. He claimed once more that he was innocent, insisting that it had been Randy Easterday who actually killed Monika. He even managed to make the jury laugh when he spoke about his newfound love for animals, saying that he had grown fond of the rabbits, pheasants and squirrels roaming on the grounds of Kirby Forensic Psychiatric Hospital. "They've got me to love them," he said. The jury ultimately ruled that Rakowitz was still insane, but not a danger to society. This meant that he could be transferred to a less secure facility. However, Judge Donna Mills refused to allow the move. She pointed to his continued obsession with murder and mutilation, noting that numerous true crime books had been found in his cell. He had also refused to take responsibility for Monika's murder, and still blamed others. Daniel Rakowitz remains confined at Kirby Forensic Psychiatric Center, where he has been for over 3 decades. His name has faded from headlines, but his crime remains one of the most grotesque in New York's history. He claimed to be a prophet, a healer, a visionary, but in reality he was nothing more than a killer. A man who took a life, desecrated a body, and turned murder into spectacle. Well, besties, that is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to say a massive thank you to my newest supporters up on Patreon: Holly. As you all know, Morbidology is a one-woman team, so the support up on Patreon seriously goes such a long way, and I really am eternally grateful. Up on Patreon I upload ad-free and early release episodes, bonus episodes of Morbidology Plus that aren't on the regular podcast platforms, behind the scenes, and I also send out a handwritten thank you card along with some cool Patreon exclusive merch. So if you'd like to join Morbidology up on Patreon, the link is in the show notes, and you can join for as little as $1 a month. Morbidology also has a private Facebook group, so if you're interested in joining that and sharing any feedback on the episodes or thoughts on the cases, please feel free to do so. Remember to check us out at morbidology.com for more information about this episode and to read some true crime articles. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and have an amazing week.